This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
I need a little bit more dose of nasty. I'm seeing a little bit of unconfidence, a little hesitation. It's not supposed to be easy. Every round gets tougher. Penetrate hard. Good passes. Shoot with confidence. I want some nasty.
What is up, San Antonio Spurs Nation? It's good to be with you again on this quarantine / isolation edition. Everyone is staying at home. Everyone's just reflecting. Everyone's suffering that there are no sports. So with me today, I got Joe Garcia from the Two Shots podcast. You can find him on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast jam on. He's there. You can find him on YouTube as well to check out his live streams. Joe, how are you doing with this long drought of no sports?
I'm just hanging in there, just finding other ways to, stay busy, just like everybody else. I'm just at home and doing the Netflix and chill and Disney Plus and chill and, just watching movies, getting fatter because what are you going to do when you're in quarantine? Everybody likes to eat.
It's the quarantine 15.
Yeah, man. That's what everybody's doing. Everybody's staying home and eating. So I'm just like everybody else, just chilling, dude, finding ways to pass the time. And, thank God that the NBA and NFL network have both opened it up to the masses, and they got free subscriptions right now. So now you can watch NFL replays and NBA replays, and I've even heard that UFC is replaying some of their better fights and stuff. So checking that out as well. So it's been interesting, man. Trying to still get my sports fix, but I mean, there's nothing else you can really do right now.
Yeah, there's the NFL. NFL off season's going on. Right? But
True.
That really doesn't interest me too much because I'm just like, does it really matter? It's not like the NBA offseason where players moving around changes the landscape of the league. I think the NFL is a different animal. But yeah, dude, same here, man. Just been watching movies all day, just trying to go out for a walk so that quarantine 15 doesn't hit me too hard. But it's good to hear that you're holding up well over there in San Antonio, Joe. Joe, real quick, let's talk Spurs basketball. I mean,
all right,
everything's going to be reflection Spurs basketball. Nothing new, but that's still good.
Oh, yeah, man. It's always good when you can talk a little bit, about Spurs basketball. And really, I mean, there really hasn't been much coming through the pipe other than, some public service announcements by Manu Ginobili. I even saw one by former Spur Paul Gasol. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to tell everybody to wash their hands, be safe, and just, let's adhere to the quarantine rule, and stay home and try to not spread and be a carrier of this horrible, coronavirus thing that's going around the world. I mean, everybody's been impacted by it. So, you have that. And then, of course, our buddy Jeff Garcia is releasing little tidbits of Spurs information and news to try to keep us all informed about what's going on in the world of San Antonio Spurs basketball. So there's that,
Yes, sir. I think I'm just like most of us right now. I'm not so angry that the season ended the way it did. I think technically we still didn't miss the playoffs. We kind of got away with one there. But at the same time, even though we're going through the ups and downs of a season and we're losing games, and I think at this point, every Spurs fan out there is going through withdrawals. They're fiending. This is the time where we're supposed to have epic basketball going on and playoff runs and, people trying to get into the playoffs or whatnot. So I know I'm one of those people. Like, I'm thinking about Spurs all the time. I'm thinking about, where we left off. That last game of the season against Dallas has been on my mind a lot. I felt like we're about to see a shift in minutes. I thought, these young guys were about to get their opportunities. Keldon got his, started doing some impressive things with the minutes that he did get. So I was really excited about what was happening in those last few games. But right now I'm just like everyone else, just thinking about what could have been. A little bit thankful that the season ended the way it did. So Joe, I wanted to ask you, are you having any withdrawals now that the Spurs are gone? Do you catch yourself thinking about this season, and what are your feelings when you start to reminisce and reflect?
No, I just thought about the season. Of course, it's been one of these, up and down seasons. You kind of just want everything to be over with in with the lack of better term. This has been a trying season, to say the least, but it's had some good points, one of them being some of these younger, Spurs getting some run, as such as, Keldon Johnson looking like he was, going to do some great things, and then season got cut short. He locked down Luka Doncic, and that was quite interesting to see. You've had the evolution of one Lonnie Walker and his breakout game with the Houston Rockets, which they replayed recently on Fox Sports Southwest, and that was again interesting to see. Spurs come back from being down against the Rockets. Lonnie Walker had an amazing fourth, and they come back and they win the damn thing. Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of missing more than anything is watching the evolution of the youth. Our younger players getting some time to shine. And missing looking at the development of one. DeJounte Murray. I thought he was doing good things before the season came to an end. He got off to a slow start. Waiting for Derek White to kind of, make some noise. He's been a little quiet, but that's what I'm really missing. I mean, I miss Spurs basketball, but the season is what it was. More than likely they weren't going to make the playoffs. I don't think I was really angry, little disappointed, but given the way that the season had unfolded, my bright spot was looking at the youth, looking at these younger players out there and balling with some of these other guys out there on the court. So that's what I'm kind of missing more than anything. And not just Spurs basketball in general, just sports in general, like watching other NBA games. Spurs, I love the Spurs, but I also like watching good matchups, so keeping an eye on what's going on in the Western Conference, Eastern Conference, with the Lakers and the Clippers, and you're looking at the Jazz, and things like that, the Denver Nuggets. So I'm that's what I'm really missing. That and, baseball season is going to be a trying time as well, since they kind of put that on hiatus, and just like everything else. And it's kind of strange, I got to tell you, watching wrestling, like when you watch SmackDown, for example, and there's nobody there. They're at their training facility. And one of the videos that came out on Twitter that made me and my son just bust out laughing, dude, is they had Steve Austin on there, and he's like, "Can I get a hell yeah?" And you have the one announcer in there, "Hell yeah," and then he's like, "What?" He goes, "What?" There's nobody there. There's just like three people in the whole audience. So that's been funny, but they're making the show go. So I miss sports in general, not just, Spurs basketball, but just, the way things used to be. And it's kind of strange and absurd that I'm saying that, but because can you remember the times when everybody would just be able to go and watch sports on the tube, on the TV, and you would see an audience, and they would be screaming and yelling and, just watching games in general, having some hot wings and again, a beer with your brothers, your buddies, hanging out at the sports bar and watching the game and just, chatting it up and having a good time, or even going out to, like the San Antonio FC games. They had just started their season, and they had a big tailgate scene out there. And I like going out there, and I missed the opening game, but I wanted to go to the second game and just, reconnect with some of those people out there. And unfortunately can't even do that anymore. So, I just miss the way things used to be, because sports, regardless of what you watched or what team you rooted for, it kind of was the median that kind of drew everybody together, but now that we've been with this, without the app, without the sports in general, the absence of sports, it's weird, dude. It just feels different, you know?
Yeah, it's a different world. I think we're all starting to see how big a role sports plays in our lives. Like you said, even if it's not Spurs or even if it's not basketball and it's something else. I mean, there's just usually sport. You could turn on your TV, you're gonna get some type of sports, and people that are competitors or like sports for entertainment right now are just we're starting to appreciate. You know what? I used to hate when the basketball season ended because all there was baseball. But now I'm like, hey, where's baseball? There's got to be something there. But yeah, no, I feel you, man. It's starting to really play a factor, I think, in everybody's psyche. Everyone's at home. Everyone's just going a little bit stir crazy, a little bit, getting a little bit anxious, and I like the way that Tony Parker always talked about sports. He's like, sports are great. Sports are, a beautiful thing. You win, you lose. That's just the way it is. But it's the competitive nature. It's the experiences. It's the highs and the lows. And it's everything. Everything that has to deal with sports is what makes it so great. And the fact that we had our Olympics coming up this summer, and one of my favorite things in the whole world when it comes to watching sports is Olympic basketball. To me, it's like that is the highest level of competitive basketball you can see, on the world. You have the greatest players from each country playing at a physical game of basketball, unlike the NBA. And so I'm gonna miss that for sure. But I want to get back to your point, Joe, that you were talking about the young guys and how that was. Talking about the San Antonio Spurs, that was the bright point of the season, was to see the progression of Lonnie Walker. Slow as it did come, we finally did get to see him get stretch runs, 3 or 4 minutes at a time, 4 or 5 minutes. And then he started getting extended minutes, and that was always fun. We got to see Keldon Johnson come up. I know you, like me, and a lot of us that cover the Spurs in some type of way were following what was going on in Austin with Luka, Quindary, and Keldon. And, that kind of leads to my next question for you, Joe. It's like, we have all this young talent. We have guys that are budding at a accelerated pace. I feel like Keldon Johnson accelerated really fast. Lonnie Walker obviously could have got 15 minutes a game from the get-go if the Spurs wanted to give it to him. And then you have like Drew Banks, Chizemi, Quindary, our first-round pick Luka, Derek White, was doing his thing. DeJounte, like you said, started playing a little bit more like we've expected him to play. And of course, it was his first season back off injury. It's not a big surprise that it took him a little while. But there's a question here now. We start talking about all this youth. We start talking about, how the future is bright, Joe. And I don't know what we're gonna do when next season, at least. Let's focus on just the next season, the 2021 season, where we have guys like Patty Mills getting 22 minutes a game. We have guys like Rudy Gay getting 21 minutes a game. Marco, 15 minutes a game. Hate to bring him up, but we have these vets that are eating up so many minutes, and I think it's a good problem to have for the Spurs to be like, man, look at all of our youth. Our youth is going to need minutes in the near future so they can start their development curve. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're starting to develop them in Austin, and that takes time, but then there's still development that needs to happen on the NBA level that takes a half a season to a season to go through. And are we going to wait another full season before we start getting these young guys some minutes? So, Joe, the question I want to ask you is, what do we do with the vets that we have on our roster next season?
That's an interesting question, because this is the dilemma that the Spurs are in. You have younger players who need more minutes out there on the court. I think Lonnie Walker has made a strong case for him getting a little bit, more playing time come next season. Same thing with Keldon Johnson. You also have other players that are in the shadows right now, still in the G League, that still need a little bit more development, like Quindary Weatherspoon, Luka Samanic. He needs to put on a little bit of weight and hit that weight room and bulk up a little bit so he can be productive out there on the court, like his size, like his his length, and his athleticism. And a lot of people don't really follow the G League and know exactly what Luka Samanic is all about. But the guy has great handles for somebody his size, can run the open court. Not only that, but he's also a prolific passer. Yeah. So he can play that position. I don't know if he's going to play a power forward. They're going to have him at a center. But whatever capacity the Spurs decide to play this young man at, he'll be able to contribute once he's ready. He still needs some time to develop some aspects of his game. But I look forward to him coming out and getting some productive minutes. Maybe not next season, but the season after. But coming back to some of the youth and now the veterans are kind of looking a little bit long in the tooth there. We have LaMarcus Aldridge, who's getting up there in age. We also have Rudy Gay, who's getting up there in age and kind of looked like he hit a wall at times this season. His progression coming back from that Achilles injury last season, he looked pretty good. This season, not so much. And he's not injured. It's Father Time's catching up with him. Yeah. And I think everybody's seen that. And unfortunately, that it's part of the game. Players age. Some of them don't age gracefully. So that's the issue that we're having right now. It's like we have DeMar DeRozan out there, who's been one of our most consistent players. A lot of isolation ball that the Spurs have been running to really get DeMar DeRozan going in this new look Spurs offense, so to speak. And I think that's the one thing that's really upset a lot of Spurs fans is, why are we just playing isolation ball? It's always, giving the ball to DeMar DeRozan. He's one of our best players on the team. We need to get him going. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of isolation plays, unfortunately, because we don't really have a lot of people that we can go to who are going to be able to create their own shots and get those and ones and be able to get to the rim as explosively as DeMar DeRozan can. Because a lot of the shots that he makes, they're underappreciated because he does he sinks down a lot of shots that are really hard to make, in transition, or you have somebody coming out at you, the weird angles that he shoots off. He shoots off with one leg and he's just fading away off balance and the shot goes in. So, I really like him as a player. I just don't think that he's going to fit very well in this Spurs system unless we can put some guys around him that are kind of going to play that style. And right now it's kind of an odd mixture of veterans that we have. We have some who are really good isolation players in DeMar DeRozan. You have DeJounte Murray, who can get up and run down the court. You have, Derek White, who's young and can get up and run down the court as well. But then you have the aging veterans. You also have Bryn Forbes. He's not aging, but he's not very consistent. Then you have Marco Beninelli, who everybody hates to death because he's a defensive liability when he's out there. And again, not very consistent. So what do you do? Are you going to, let's say have these contracts be thrown out at some of these older players? Or are you going to go ahead and say, you know what, it's time to give the green light to the youth, and have some of these younger players really start taking those roles and letting, some of your veterans go in, Bryn Forbes and Marco Beninelli. We don't really need them here anymore. I think we've shown that some of the youth already, as I have stated, are ready to really, get those minutes and show that they can contribute at the highest levels. So it's interesting to see what the Spurs will do. I don't want them to really go out and start chasing free agents. I think they need to start looking from within. And as I stated, they need to let these young guys go out there and really start coming into their own, because let's face it, man, when free agency hits in probably another season and the contracts of one Patty Mills starts coming off, things are going to get very interesting. If you're going to want to let him go and not really pay him the money that he's going to command, you got to have faith in some of your up and comers, So I think the transition period from us being a little bit older to us getting younger, it's at hand already. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a hard decision for the Spurs, but I think they're gonna have to say goodbye to some of the fan favorites and some of our vets. It's time, the time has come for change. So we got to pull that trigger now.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think this isn't anything that the Spurs were expecting. I think the Spurs were expecting this team to be very good. I think most of us were. I think most of us were putting the Spurs coming into the season somewhere in the middle of the race, and talking about playoffs, right? I mean, we had the blend of youth, we had the blend of the veterans. You know, it's a good mixture when you look at it on paper. It's a good mixture until you start to see where all the minutes are going. You know, it's like, oh wow, we have like, you know, 6 or 7 guys that are over 26. Everyone else is under 25. You know, and it's just like, oh wow, you know, we're young, but the minutes went heavy to the veterans. Let's look at it just, you know, from this season at a per game basis. Patty Mills was getting 22 minutes a game. You know, Rudy Gay is getting 21 minutes a game. Marco, 15. DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, 34 and 33. Then Bryn Forbes was getting 25 minutes a game. Those 6 players right there, they're over 26 years old. Bryn Forbes is 26. LaMarcus, 34. DeMar DeRozan, 30. Patty Mills, 31. Rudy Gay, 33. Marco Bellinelli, 33 years old as well. And those are where our minutes lie, in their hands. And like you said, this year, it wasn't an injury thing. I don't know if it was a role situation, but they just did not come out to play. And what worries me, Joe, is I don't know if the Spurs are going to be that type of team that pays players for past performances. You know, it's like we gave Pau Gasol a huge contract. For what? For being a 2-time champion in his career? Because he really didn't do anything after that to deserve that money. You know, and here we go giving Rudy Gay a big deal, right? 2 years, you know, was it $28 million for 2 years? Because he had just come off of a great year with us, with the San Antonio Spurs. So we gave him 2 more years. And what did he do this year? Nothing. I mean, what has he lived up to that contract? I would say no, you know, but he's getting a lot of minutes. So we're playing players who have heavy contracts. And if we look at next season, Rudy Gay, $14 million. Patty Mills, $13.2 million. You know, these guys are getting paid a lot of money. And I don't know if it's in the best interest to keep them or not. Because I think, like you said, I would love to keep these players, but they got to understand, you know, Father Time has caught up to us. These young guys are ready to go. Can I get paid $14 million and be a veteran? Just have a veteran role, come off the bench. You know, instead of getting 21 minutes a game for Rudy Gay, can he get 12? You know, can he get 13? And can we swallow the pill of he's getting paid about $1 million per minute on average, you know, per game? But I don't know. It's a question that I think I'm on the same page as you, Joe. I think that it's time for development to occur with these young guys, and the money isn't going to show it. I don't think we're going to pay any of these young guys anytime soon. Let's see, Bryn Forbes going to be a free agent. Jakob Poeltl, obviously, those are the 2 guys this season that are going to be first priority when it comes to trying to extend them and give them new contracts that work with the future of the team. But I don't know, Joe. I think a lot of what went wrong this season was giving our minutes so heavily to our older guys, our veterans. And I think if we were going to lose 27 games, if we're only going to win 27 games, might as well develop. But that's something that we've been talking about all year, right, Joe? It's like, oh, you know, can we get these guys to get more minutes? But it's just something the Spurs take their time with. And I hope next season I hope there's something different. What do you think, Joe? Do you think next season we can expect anything different, or are we going to ride it out with these veterans one more time?
We know how Coach Pop is. He's almost stubborn to a fault, you know. But I'll be the first one to tell you that the Spurs system as it currently stands is archaic by today's NBA standards. So something needs to kind of change in that regard. You know, they need to update the system for a more modern Spurs, you know, NBA era, and the Spurs are kind of behind the gun in that regards. So, you know, you have some of the youth too that we really didn't mention, such as Drew Eubanks and Chizemi Metu as well. I think Drew Eubanks, I like the guy. I like his enthusiasm on the bench. Everybody always sees him, just jumping up and down and exuberant when somebody has a spectacular play, whether it be a steal or a dunk. He's like the team cheerleader. He's jumping up there and he's exciting to watch on the bench. But he's gotten some minutes to play, sparingly here. And he's already been with the Spurs for more than one season. I think he's one of these guys that the Spurs will probably wind up letting go, unfortunately. Shazemi, he's another guy, that I had high hopes for, but we're going to have to see what the Spurs wind up doing because let's face it, there's only so much money to go around, So they're going to have to decide on these younger guys, who are they going to keep, who shows the most promise. But, another thing that I see happening is, like you stated, the minutes being given to some of these veteran players, and the duo that was, Bryn Forbes, Marco Beninelli, which just was terrible out there on the court. Defensive liabilities waiting to happen. Horrible on defense, couldn't stop anybody. Horrible in transition. They were horrible trying to get out on the wing. Teams were just dropping threes, raining down threes on the Spurs. Just setting up, most of the time it was just zone defense on the Spurs, and the Spurs had a hard time trying to figure that out because they didn't really have a lot of three-point shooters, and that's how you kind of beat the zone. You either knock down your mid-range jumpers consistently, you go and put your head down, go to the stripe and start, earning your points that way, or you start knocking down some threes. And unfortunately, three-pointers have been our weakness, so that's why I'm saying, I think that the Spurs need to start looking for prolific shooters. They just need to look for people who can, are solid 3-and-D kind of players, or they're missing that. They really don't have a 3-and-D player. They had one in DeMarre Carroll, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, things didn't work out, and they just let him walk, basically, in a buyout. And he got, brought out by the San Antonio Spurs, and he's now with the Houston Rockets, and we're still going to wind up paying him, even though he's not with the team. So those are boneheaded moves that I can't forgive the organization for. Ever since it seems like R.C. Buford went and took up the CEO position, the front office has been lacking as far as their poor decision making. Even when R.C. was in the front office, throwing contracts at one Paul Gasol and still paying him, $5 million for this season, and he's not even playing in the league. He was over there with the Portland Trailblazers, I believe, before they went ahead and finally told him, hey, we're going to call it quits on you because you're injured. So it's poor decisions in that regards, but it has more to do with the lineups that have really plagued us this season, and just that archaic system. We really haven't caught up with the times, and I think it's time that we need to start changing things up a little bit. We got to start looking towards who's going to be replacing Pop when he decides to call it quits. Is it going to be Timmy? Is it going to be Becky, or is it going to be another coach? We really don't know. I think that's one of the things that I think hurts us a lot of times, because we don't get a lot of big name free agents that want to play here, because we have that uncertainty. We don't know who our next head coach is going to be. If we knew, maybe San Antonio would be an attractive destination for some of these free agents, but as it stands, we're just kind of an aging team, kind of a dinosaur right now, where we still have a big man, we still have a big man in LaMarcus Aldridge, which is one of the better big men in the NBA. But unfortunately, that's a position that's going the way of the dinosaur. We need somebody who's a little bit more athletic and can get up there and mix it up with some of these younger guys like a Jakob Poeltl. So that's what I'm getting at, man. The time for change is at hand, and it needs to happen. Hopefully it does next season, because if not, expect more of the same. And if, they still keep giving those minutes to the veterans and they can't figure out the lineups, it's going to be another 27, maybe 30 win season.
Yeah, I know. It's frustrating, Joe. It's frustrating. What was the most frustrating part to you? Was it that we never changed anything throughout the season, or was it that you expected more out of our main two guys? Was it that you're like, hey, DeMar and LaMarcus need to step up, they need to figure out a way to lead this team to wins? Or were you more frustrated with, like, I can't believe we're getting the same thing over and over and over again?
No, it was more the inconsistencies with the rest of the team, more than it was with LaMarcus and more than it was with DeMar. DeMar, I knew was going to be money. LaMarcus is LaMarcus. You knew that from the last couple of seasons that he all but disappears in the big games, and it has to do more with matchups than anything else. LaMarcus is who he is, and unfortunately, he's never going to be that type of player that Spurs fans want. He's not the second coming of Tim Duncan by any means. You know, he's just who he is, and either you love him or you hate him. You know, and the Spurs fans really, for the most part, really don't care for him much. You know, so you have that to contend with. But I was more disappointed in the rest of the supporting cast. You know, I thought I was going to see more out of DeJounte. I thought I was going to see a little bit more out of Derek White. Surprised that Bryn Forbes started the season off on a good note, but then he kind of declined as the season wore on. You know, Jakob Poeltl looked good at times as well, but just didn't get enough run. You know, and then they really didn't want to put in one Lonnie Walker. And then when they finally started giving him playing time and he had that breakout game against the Rockets, then they were like, whoa, well, maybe we should have played him a little bit more, you know, but it was kind of too little too late at that point in time. So I was more disappointed in the supporting cast, even Rudy Gay. You know, Rudy Gay, you thought he was going to have a better season than he did, and he really didn't. So it's everybody else who didn't step up to the plate this season. It's not so much, you know, LaMarcus or DeMar DeRozan who are at fault. And it's really, at the end of the day, the Spurs team as a whole who really didn't step up to the plate and kind of didn't live up to expectations. And to the dismay of Spurs fans, it was a disappointing season. But you knew it was coming sooner or later, you know?
Yeah. I agree, man. I mean, if you look at the numbers, you know, LaMarcus and DeMar did their jobs. You know, I think if you look at the number of shots they take per game, their averages and all that stuff, statistically, they did their job. And you're right, you know, Patty Mills was our third best player for about 20 games, you know, 25 games.
And yeah, he was money. He was one of the guys who stepped up from the bench, so I give him that.
Yeah, Patty stepped up early. Now, I remember doing a pod a long time ago saying that, hey, I love Patty, but this worries me. It's worrying me right now that Patty Mills, our 31-year-old backup point guard, is our third best player. And I mean, he's getting paid like he's getting paid very well, like $13 million. He's like third or fourth on our cap space, so he's playing up to his money. But is that a recipe for success, you know, when it comes to Spurs basketball? Are we going to be as good as we can be when Patty Mills is our third best player? I don't think so. And like you said, Rudy Gay was a no-show for the first, I would say, I don't know. He only really started playing well the last 5 games or so of the season. You know, Marco hit and miss. Bryn Forbes, you know, you said that he started off hot, and I agree, man. Like, those first 4 games, we looked really good. We're like, oh, man, we're getting out in transition. DeJounte is finding Bryn. Bryn's getting up shots. He's knocking them down. DeJounte's getting turnovers and leading to offense. You know, it's like, okay, great, yes. But then after 4 games, the league was like, oh, Bryn's the only one that's going to take an outside shot, so let's chase Bryn Forbes off the line. The rest of the NBA got the memo, and we just sucked from that point on. Bryn's, you know, production went way down, and when Bryn can't hit an open 3, it's really going to shrink the floor for everyone else. Makes DeMar's job harder, makes LaMarcus Aldridge's job harder. And then later on in the season, it's like, oh, hey, LaMarcus, we're going to need you to shoot some threes if you can there, bud. You know, can you knock a couple threes down for us? And he's just like, yeah, sure, I'll shoot some. And so he starts shooting them, and he goes on this crazy, like, 4-game stretch where he only misses like three threes. He's like 13 for 17 or something. And things start to change again. But again, I agree that the other guys didn't step up. All these other guys didn't step up. The coaches did not, or I guess were not willing to experiment with some of the lineup possibilities that could have been out there. We talked about Lonnie Walker. I mean, there's so many things that we could have done. We could have gave Lonnie Walker more minutes. We could have benched Bryn Forbes for somebody. We could have started, Derek White and DeJounte together. You know, who would have thought that Trey Lyles was going to come into this season and start every single game. Like, whoever, if I were to give you the bet, Joe, last offseason, saying, hey, newly acquired free agent Trey Lyles is going to get, like the fourth most minutes on this team. He's going to start every single game. Would you take that bet?
Nah, I thought he was going to be coming off the bench. I thought they were going to give the nod to Jakob Portal,
Yeah. So there's so many things. Exactly. Starting Jakob, coming into the season, I was almost just like everyone else. I was pretty sure that we're going to get a lot of Jakob and LaMarcus together starting the game, but no, there was just, there were so many possibilities, so many different options that we could have done that we didn't do. And to me, that's on the coaches, that's on the organization. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, it's all their fault, because if you're in that coaching room with Pop, with Timmy and everyone, they have a plan. They worked hard on that plan, and they're going to stick to that plan. They're going to say, look, for better or for worse, we're going to decide as a coaching staff that this is the direction that we're going to go in. And we got to live with the results. Because you got to have that mindset, because if you're 20 games into the season and everything's blowing up on you, I mean, if you're the Spurs, I think you stick with your guns. If you're Atlanta or, one of these other teams that's like, oh, let's fire the coach, or let's trade away this guy. Let's start changing our plan. And I don't think the Spurs are the type of organization that press the panic button. And so stubborn, you might call it stubborn of us, but we're just like, no, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it all season, and we're going to ride or die with this lineup and the starting unit, and we died with it. And I just don't know, Joe, do you think even if our bench were to step it up a little bit more than they did this season, is having LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan as your two best guys good enough to win a championship? I think that is the ultimate question moving forward. Are we going to be good enough to win it all with these two guys?
And the simple answer is no, we're not. Mm-hmm. When you have DeMar and you have LaMarcus, these are just players who are good. They're good players. They're decent players. They're just former NBA All-Stars. They're never going to be a bona fide superstar. That's what the Spurs are really missing right now. That's the missing piece to the whole puzzle. Mm-hmm. If you had a bona fide superstar on this team, and those are hard to come by. Not every team has an NBA superstar, but if the Spurs had one, this team would look a lot different. Our superstar that we had, he asked to be traded, and that was, fake number 2, Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. When he asked to be traded, we went ahead and obliged because we really didn't have a choice. But we now see the lingering effects from that trade. Him asking to be traded, leaving the Spurs. Now, he won a chip over there in Toronto. Now he has the Clippers balling as well. That's what a bona fide superstar does. He's clutch in the fourth, which we have not. The Spurs have had trouble closing out teams, this season. They've been in games. They've been in close games, but they just can't get over the hump. They have a hard time in that third quarter. They have a hard time in the fourth quarter, in the last 4 or 5 minutes, trying to close out close games, and they lose them. That's been the issue with this team, is that they are missing that prolific player. And with DeMar and with LaMarcus, that's not enough weapons. You have a good youth core. Let's put it like that. Mm-hmm. The youth movement that we have here is very good. They're young, they're athletic, they can get up and down the court. They're exciting to watch. We have Lonnie Walker, who is exciting to watch. He can jump up there, and he has, some spectacular plays. But for the majority of it, and I know Spurs fans have noticed it as well, mm-hmm. when he goes up there, he also has a lot of point blank misses at the rim. Mm-hmm. He misses a lot of dunks. He misses a lot of layups, makes poor decisions in transition. But that is going to get rectified with more playing time. Mm-hmm. But can you imagine if we have these younger players like DeJounte, we have Jakob Portal out there, you have, Lonnie Walker, Derek White, Keldon, Trey Lyles out there, and you mix it up with somebody who can really be out there and change the dynamic of the game. In other words, take over the game completely. That would actually put the Spurs in a really nice position to make some noise in the Western Conference and not be scrapping for that 8th spot. I believe right before everything ended, the Spurs were the 11th or 12th seed in the West?
Yep.
And they were kind of declining, right?
Yeah. Well, we won. We're on a 1-game win streak against Dallas.
Yeah, but that's the problem. We can't win more than 3 games this season, in a row.
And whose fault is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, who do we put the blame on for us not being able to win 2 or 3, 4 games in a row? I mean, I think
that has more to do with the players than it has to do with Pop, because
so too.
When you look at Coach Pop and what he was trying to do out there, trying to fine-tune these lineups and trying to get something out of these guys, he was looking for some type of chemistry, because he knew, and he was frustrated as well, that this team was just underperforming. They were just flat. He was getting nothing. No matter what he would throw out there, even the Spurs fans are like, it's so obvious, Coach Pop, you need to do this, you need to do that. We don't know what goes on in practice.
Yeah.
We're not there. We don't know what he sees. We're not an NBA head coach getting paid that big money, to make these tough decisions. So I'm sure that he saw things out there he likes, things he didn't like, some things going on in practice, matchup-wise, lineup-wise. He tried everything he could. It had more to do, I think, with the underperforming players that we put out there on the court, our youth, our talent. It just didn't live up to expectations. And I don't think anybody was more frustrated with that than Coach Pop. I just think if we didn't have Pop, maybe we would have only won 10 games this season. It could have been even worse than that. So, we have one of the better coaches in the league, and probably, best, in my opinion, best coach of all time in Coach Pop, but he can only do so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. These veterans, I think, did a good job of trying to keep everybody their heads above water. I think when it came to this season, I mean, the vets didn't show up on the court, but I think they showed up in the locker room as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think every time I heard Patty Mills or Rudy Gay and them talk about it, the season, they're like, we're taking it one game at a time. We're moving forward. We're trying to get better. There's little areas in that we're getting better in, and we're focusing on those moving forward. So like the vets did their job, I think, trying to help this young group endure a terrible season, but that's not what they get paid to do. You know what I mean? So I agree, man. It's on the players. This season is on the players, man. Hey, so real quick, Joe, I wrote this down. What would you think of this lineup next year? Okay. It's not that crazy, but DeJounte Murray and Derek White at the 1 and 2. Lonnie, Trey Lyles, Lonnie Walker, Trey Lyles, and Jakob. Does that lineup right there, do you think that lineup can lead the Spurs to more than 27 wins, I'm sorry.
And you were saying you would Jakob Portal in the mix, correct?
Yeah, I would say Derek White at the 1, DeJounte at the 2, or vice versa, right? Lonnie Walker at the 3, Trey Lyles staying there at the 4, and then Jakob at the 5. All youth, all under 25 years old, 25 and under. Do you think that lineup could have won more than 27 games this season or next, or just if you gave them a season? And that means you have Bryn Forbes coming off the bench, Patty Mills, all the vets coming off the bench. No DeMar DeRozan, no LaMarcus Aldridge on your team anymore.
Here's the problem with that lineup, and I'm going to be honest with you. You still have DeJounte Murray as your starting point guard. The only way that lineup will work is if you have Derek White come out and be your starting point guard, and then move DeJounte to your SG or your shooting guard.
I like that.
Because the reason I say that is because Derek White has better court vision than DeJounte Murray. And Spurs fans can get mad at me if they want to, but it's the truth.
Yeah, they get mad at me too. I 100% agree with you. 100%.
If you look at what he's able to do out there on the court, he has better passing ability, and he has a better better court vision than DeJounte Murray. The thing is, DeJounte is a more athletic guard. He's a dog, is what we call him. Mm-hmm. He's not afraid to mix it up and get in people's face, play hard-nosed defense. And he's always, the thing with DeJounte is that he had a lot of turnovers at times because he was trying to force the issue. He was trying to force feed, DeMar DeRozan. He was trying to force feed LaMarcus Aldridge. And those are because he was on orders from Coach Pop. Hey, you need to get the star players going. Mm-hmm. And at times they were like, well, why didn't DeJounte take that open shot? Because he was called upon to pass the ball. Yeah. If he would have taken that shot and made it, Coach Pop would have really chewed him out and taken him out of the game because he wasn't doing what he was told.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. At times when you're open, you shouldn't feel bad about taking an open shot and sinking it. I think that type of archaic system needs to go the way of the dinosaur. You need to let your youth kind of develop and be able to shoot the ball. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Derek White comes into play there, because if he can go ahead and get DeJounte in these nice open positions with the right angles, on the perimeter or even above, beyond the arc, and let him go in an isolation play, so to speak, he'll have a better efficiency. He'll be more efficient on the offensive end.
Yep.
And that's why I like Derek White playing the point, and I like DeJounte being able to do his thing and use his athleticism to kind of create his own shot, get to the rim, but be in better position to do so than having to worry about passing the ball and getting everybody else going. I think that should fall under Derek. And if you let DeJounte just give him the green light and let him do what he wants to, he can be really good,
Yeah. DeJounte, his best skill set, Joe, what would you say his best skill set is?
Being able to create his own shot.
Absolutely.
Getting to the rim with ease because of his speed and athleticism. There's only one other player that we have on the Spurs team that is even faster than DeJounte Murray in the open court, and that is Lonnie Walker.
Yep. Yeah, and it honestly, it works in like the world of, if you're just talking strictly basketball, it works. I mean, because Derek White, his best, if you ask me what his best skill set is, it's the point guard skill set. He can push the floor. He understands how to create. He understands how to take what the defense gives him. He knows how to not force the issue and find the easy play. He finds the easy play like no one else on our team. You know what I mean? And then that puts DJ, like you said, to do his thing. Lonnie Walker, to be the shooter, right? DJ becomes the slasher. Lonnie becomes the shooter, slasher. Yeah, I mean, if that lineup, you see, Joe, that's a lineup that I think can actually realistically win games. You know what I mean? Because
they're more balanced because you have a balance too.
On both
not
sides
only
of the floor,
in the backcourt, but also inside the paint with Trey Lyles and Jakob Poeltl, because they can get up there and kind of guard the rim. And you have Jakob who can get up there and get you those rebounds, and he's a shot blocker. Mm-hmm. So you have that going for you. And as he gets the block, you have Trey Lyles who can actually pick it up and just throw that ball down court for an easy two, because they're going to be in transition running the open court,
Yep. Yeah, see, I think when it comes to our vets and DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, I hate to say it because I love those guys. I love everything that they've done for us in the past year, 2 years, 3, 4, whatever. Patty, Marco, champions with us, all that. But in the 2020 season, 2021 season, if there is one or whatever, they're going to be in the way. They're going to be in the way of what the next 5 to 10 years are going to be. And I know the Spurs process, they're like, we're not going to rush this. Yeah, they're in the way now, but, these young guys will get their opportunity in a year, 2, 3 years. It's like, you know what? I don't think that's going to be good enough. I think we should cut bait with our 2 big guys. I think we should go full youth, because I feel our youth, the lineup that we just talked about, is good enough to win more than 27 games in the league. To me, that looks like a crazy defensive lineup. You have shooting. You have Lonnie Walker and Trey who can spread the floor. I don't know. It was just a question. I mean, we can talk about lineups all day long. Joe, but before I let you go, I want to ask you, with everything in limbo and everything changing on the day to day, everything is changing so fast, not just when it comes to what we can do in our homes and what we can't do, curfews and what's open, what's not open. It's a crazy world we're living in right now. And we talked about the sports being gone. But what do you hope happens to this 1920 season, NBA season, that's right now currently on hiatus? So technically there's still a chance that it can resume in some type of way. Now, there's a couple scenarios out there. We've talked about just jumping right into the playoffs. We've talked about, picking up where we left off. We've talked, there's been reports out there that, maybe we'll just do like a best of 5 playoff series. And there's talks about this season not even concluding at all and just calling it quits. So I know we can't predict what world we're going to live in 2 months from now. We can barely predict the world we're going to live in tomorrow. But when it comes to this NBA season, what in your mind is the best, are you hoping for it to play out? Do you want it to just end, or do you have something else in mind?
This is what I hope, the commissioner does, Adam Silver does. There's a lot of money that's going to be lost if they don't finish out the season, in particular to finish playing the playoffs, and crown an NBA champion. Mm-hmm. But in lieu of what's going on, my hopes are that Adam Silver will make the right decision and put the health of not only the players, but also the staff as well, because you're going to have camera guys out there still in empty arenas that are going to have to shoot the game, to put it out there on the airwaves for everybody to watch. The last thing you want to do is have people lose their lives over this sport. At the end of the day, basketball is just that. It's just basketball. There's more pressing issues at hand. Mm-hmm. So I hope what they do is that they just go ahead and really make the right call and just cancel the rest of the season. Say it's over, it's done with. And we just move on to next season and see if we can return to a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. This is a strange time that we're in. It's kind of like we're living in one of those movies, like Pandemic or, Outbreak from back in the day. Mm-hmm. It's crazy that these things are happening. It's a change for everybody. Yeah. So I think just canceling the season, doing the right thing, and letting these players be at home and just, take care of their families and be with them, because really it's hard to work, when you're out there and you have your families at home. You're always worried about your kids, your wife, what's going on with my mom, my dad, mm-hmm. or even family in general, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, in-laws. So there's a lot of things that are on people's minds. So it's more than just a game of basketball that's at hand. It's people's lives that are at stake, and you can't really put a price tag on that. So I think the right thing to do is just cancel the season.
Yeah, I think so too. I would like for us just to cancel it, lick our wounds. Okay, the cap, the salary cap's going to take a huge hit, right? And things are going to change on how the NBA functions when it comes to money. But I think you're right, Joe. I mean, let's lick our wounds with all that. Let's move forward. Let's start the next season. Hopefully we can maybe start it around October, same time. And just move forward, and let it be what it be. I wouldn't mind if the NBA announced, the individual awards. Like, you know what, go ahead and give us, your MVP and all these things for this short season. Maybe even crown conference champions. I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind seeing Milwaukee get some type of reward for having one of the best seasons ever, statistically, and Giannis having one of the better seasons statistically anyone's ever had, and LeBron and what they did, I don't want to give them all the credit, we're Spurs Nation, but, they did have a good season. They were top of the West, and, maybe crown them conference champions, give out the regular season awards, and just call it a day. I like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll just have to see what happens, what the NBA decides to do,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for coming on the show. I know that, there's not much to talk about, but Spurs Nation can always find something to talk about. So I appreciate you coming on. Why don't you tell all listeners where they can find you?
They can go ahead and find us on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter, kind of a Twitterholic. I'm always on there. You can look for me. My Twitter handle is at Two Shots Podcast, all spelled out, TWOSHOTS Podcast. And for everything else they need to know about us, they can always go to our website, which is Two Shots Podcast. Again, all spelled out, TWOSHOTS Podcast.com. And they can even look at our replays of, our backlog of videos that we have for, the Spurs Takeover, our little post-game shows that we do, and even the Two Shots Podcast live streams and the latest episodes of the Two Shots Podcast itself. Everything's all there for you guys to check out and, just take a look around and see what we've done.
Yeah, Spurs Nation, I'm talking to you now. You need to go check out all the whole library of Two Shots Podcast. Joe does a great job of bringing people from all over to talk Spurs basketball. If it's via live stream, those are always fun. The podcasts are great and very informative. You have great guests that come on your show all the time. So Spurs Nation, if you're looking for good content, consistent content, quality over everything, the Two Shots Podcast is where you need to go. So make sure you go ahead and subscribe to his channel on wherever you get your podcast jam, his YouTube channel, Twitter. Obviously, Joe's a lot of fun on Twitter. You're not just talking Spurs basketball on Twitter, are you, Joe?
No, we talk, I let people into my everyday life, just letting them know my personality and who I am above all else, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And if, people just want to talk about, hey, how you feeling? How you doing today? Or they want to jump in the world of nerddom, geekdom, and talk about Transformers or, G.I. Joe or something weird like that, or even the latest streaming, TV series or movies that are coming out on Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. I'm here for it, man. Let's just go ahead and chat.
Absolutely. All right, guys, Spurs Nation, make sure that you go and follow one of the best Spurs follows on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. Joe, thank you for coming on. We got to do this again soon, bud.
Oh, yeah. Always a pleasure, man. And make sure you all guys follow, a Bucking Spurs podcast, too, because they put out some great stuff, especially their videos, the breakdown videos that you have out there on YouTube. Those are quite well done, I should say. So make sure you check out that and you subscribe to his YouTube channel as well.
Appreciate that, Joe. Thank you guys for stopping in. Thank you for watching. Again, you can go to buckingspurs.com and get all of our content there. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast jam on. And go to YouTube. Subscribe to all of us on YouTube. I know right now you're just sitting at home. You're not doing anything. You're chilling just like the rest of us. Spurs Nation, we're going to be all right. We're going to get through this together. Catch you on the next episode. Go Spurs, go.